And this was in 1913 after they
13.
Do you know where they were married?
In Montreal. And they came back and rented a cottage in Rosse Park in the summer. That's the summer of 1913. They were married in April. And in the bottom picture is Grandpa Scarf is visiting them, and the funny little other girl is Granny's youngest sister, Edith. Edith.
Okay.
Pierce came down from Montreal, apparently, and visited them. Marge was born in 1914, and I think it was 1915 when they moved out to Rosse. But when they first moved out to Rosse, they kept a pig.
They had a pig too, did they?
You did that during the war. You know, that was your contribution.
During the First World War.
I have the whole written background of the Knoll. Granny bought it. Granny bought it in 1913. No, 1917. My mother was the one that named the house the Knoll, because she named it after the house that was in Sussex. And you were born in Montreal, but I don't know whether they were living at the Knoll at the time or whether they were in St. John at the time that you were born. I was born in the house in 1918.
And the ice house was full of sawdust, and that's where we kept the big blocks of ice.
Brought it from the river.
Yeah, when we used to make ice cream on Sundays, we'd take a block and bring it to the back door and put the garden hose on it and wash the sawdust off, and then chop it up and mix it up with coarse salt and put it in the freezer and turn the crank. The barn was here, a great big old barn, and the back door used to be where that side door is. This is a new L they've added, but this used to be all fields. It's all grown up in trees now. So Dad used to move the whole family down to New River for the summer.
In 1920, Dad went to Rosse Collegiate School and made friends with one of the Knight boys. One of the Knight boys. Now, the Knight family lived at New River Beach and owned all the land around there. And they had a mill at the mouth of the river, a lumber mill. And so Dad, when Easter holidays would come, he would go down with his friend to the Knights instead of going over to Digby. He'd go down and spend his time at New River Beach. So he knew the Knight family.
And they owned all the land. They owned right out to Barnaby Head, all that.
So that's why Dad knew about New River Beach.
And Josh used to, and Dad, when they were over the weekend, they'd walk out to one of the Knight's lumber camps in the woods. There was one old guy there that couldn't read or write, and he was very ashamed of being illiterate. So he'd tell Josh, "Always bring out a newspaper, boy. I like to keep up with the time." So one time Josh brought out a newspaper and handed this old fella, and he picked it up upside down. He says, "Well, there's not much here about the election. I'll say that much." Well, there were two Knight girls.
1924.
And Dad, I think, was romancing one of them, little Nora, who never married. Neither one of them ever married. And Nora became a matron at Rosse Collegiate when I went there. This house had no electricity, and it had no running water.
And
Granny, no means of heat except this massive fireplace in the living room, and on the other side of the wall an open fireplace with a spit to cook a leg of lamb or whatever on it, and a bakery oven alongside it. above high water mark, I think I explained, was just a lattice work of great big timber logs from the wreckage of wharves and shore buildings that had been washed away during the Saxby gale of 1885 or whatever it was. And to get down to the sand on the beach, you had to walk over these great big logs. So we'd get a pole, and we'd get one free and pole it down, and as soon as the high tide came in, why, we get floated, and then we get another one, and then we'd get a pole and nail the pole across, and we'd make kind of a catamaran. And when the sardine boats came to sail in the weir, we'd paddle these things out and jump up on the sardine boat, and any fish that they didn't want for canning, they'd chuck it on the deck and we'd grab it, a big codfish or an eel or a salmon or something, and we'd take it back to the family to cook. And then I, of course, caught the 8-pound salmon right by the tail in the river, and we ate that. And then I used to shoot snipe in the fall, in the latter part of the year. As soon as the snipe came, I knew the summer was over. They would always come about the last week in August, and I would think, cripes, another week. A week from now, I'll be back in that crummy school again.
But Dad, at times, was working, so he was not down there all the time, but he'd come down on weekends. And then he would take us over to Mace's Bay.
And people used to line up on the rail of the bridge and fish for flounders.
Flounder, and we'd just haul them in like a...
Oh, you could. They would come in just like a great big brown paper bag. You'd see them coming in with the... They would come in to eat the clams that had been left over by the clam diggers. If the fork went through a clam, for instance, they'd throw that to one side. Flounder would come in, he'd just suck the whole clam right out through the hole. And I remember one time we brought home 45 flounders.
Yeah, we would take them down to the river at the back of the house and fillet them.
And scale them first. You would, and then you could hold the tail and get all the scales off it, and then turn it over and get all the scales off the... But milk, I used to have to go out to a farmhouse with a bicycle and bring home 2 jugs of milk on the handlebars.
This was if Frank Daly's cows were not producing, but Frank Daly lived just up. I mean,
at Penfield, or
no, he lived on the road that went from the main highway and the road into our house. Then there was the Daly's farm. Old Mrs. Daly, and she must have been almost 90, I suppose. And she had false teeth, and when she was almost and he called her Mama Click.
Because they clicked. They used to, when she talked, they clicked together like castanets. We used to call her Mama Click.
She had 2 sons. She had 2 sons, and Frank was the one that ran the farm, that did all the work, that was the one looked after his mother, did everything. And
his brother Roy was a drunk.
And he was the game warden.
He was the game warden.
And now they talk about Roy Daly as if he was some kind of a saint or something down there. But Frank had 2 horses, and they were the most... You couldn't have got a worse pair of horses to work together, because the mare was black Blanche,
yeah.
and she was just on the go all the time like that.
I think she was an American saddlebred, just like Harry.
Yeah.
Because I remember she used to bring her front feet up just like Harry.
And then the
other one was a little fat Morgan who just plodded along. And he used to let Blanche pull him,
And Frank would be sitting up there and continually saying, "Whoa, Blanche, get
Whoa,
up,
Blanche.
Whoa, Blanche, get up, Roddy. Whoa, Blanche."
Get up, Roddy.